once we realized that Wendy needed more care, more direct care, her primary care doctor recommended palliative care. And it's just a way to kind of monitor what's going on in an environment that makes her feel comfortable, and just check the vitals, check the meds, check the things that need to be checked, so she doesn't have to make a trip to the doctor to do all those things. And from the very first meeting, we had a wonderful palliative care nurse through Four Seasons, Nicole Justice, who was just amazing. She was concerned about Wendy, concerned about how she was feeling, what she was able to do, what things maybe she couldn't do that were starting to kind of show up. And also just her general health, skincare, all the things you have to be concerned and cognizant about as a loved one gets to a place where they're not as mobile. But at the same time, what Nicole also did, which was a real blessing, was she was concerned about me. She wanted to know how I was doing. She always made a point of that, made a point of, giving me suggestions of ways that I could make things easier on myself, make things easier on Wendy. And was just always there. If we had any questions, she had answers. If things needed to be adjusted, she knew what to do and could take care of that. While she was in the hospital over at Part E, we met another awesome palliative care nurse who works through Part E. Natalie was the one that had the talk, which was the talk that we had to, that Wendy's body was just telling us that it was time. And that's a very difficult thing if that's your spouse or loved one, but it's also a place you get to where you have to have somebody there who you can rely on, who can kind of facilitate the next steps. Once we got to Elizabeth House, it was almost like, it's when you go to the dentist and they put that big x-ray roby thing on so they can x-ray your teeth. It was almost like that was lifted, and I got a chance to really, I wasn't as much her caregiver anymore. I got to be her husband again, which there's no amount of money in the world I'd pay to be able to do that, to be her husband, just to hold her hand, just to read a book together, just to listen to music, and just be there, just be there for her, and not have to worry about, is it time to eat, do we need to change a brief or whatever. It just got to be a husband, which was awesome. Dignity to me is, especially end of life, is huge. It's huge. And for someone like Wendy, who struggled so much for so long, to have her be in a place where she could live out the final chapter of her life in peace with people around her who loved her and cared for her. I don't know, I would have paid $1 million for that. I mean, that's huge. As a first-time caregiver, Four Seasons made it to where now I feel like, well, okay, now I've got aging parents. Now I've got a resource so that I can say, hey, listen, things start to change more, and you need help. Please don't hesitate. They're there. Utilize the resource, because at the end of the day, the end of our life shouldn't be a struggle. The end of our life should be a celebration. And the only way you can have a celebration like that and approach into life like that is to have people around you who, A, know what they're doing, and B, are concerned, and C, are in there for the long haul. So a few months after Wendy had passed, once the initial shock had worn off, I think there's a kind of a little downtime you need to kind of let all that kind of work. But Jessica knew all that, so she knew when to get started. So we got started, and I was in a class of about 8 or 10 people, and we had good cries, and we talked about our loved ones and talked about our people, and it was really helpful. Jessica was wonderful in just facilitating those classes, throwing in things that, maybe tips or things to make it a little bit easier, resources to kind of deal with the day-to-day. And, I think it was one of those things where if I hadn't had that to start the journey, then I wouldn't be where I am today. So as my grief journey progressed, and as I got closer to my year anniversary, I talked to Stephanie Wilson and Paul McCohen and Paige, and just felt like that maybe there was a way that they could use me through the foundation to kind of help raise awareness of what Four Seasons does. I think that's kind of the beauty of the foundation behind the palliative and the hospice and the post the post-grief care, there's also this foundation that does all these things to kind of facilitate and help raise awareness, help raise funds, help just to be there to kind of support what all goes on. And we're very fortunate in this area to have a group of people who A, are concerned about what they're doing, B, have a real heart for the job, and C, want to see Four Seasons continue to not only do what they're doing, but to grow, to expand, offer more services, the things that a growing area needs. I don't feel like we could ever shortchange or not benefit from a quality end of life. And I think that's what Four Seasons, the foundation, can kind of span that gap between palliative care and between hospice and between post-grief services. They're like the stand in the gap there. You can't do things obviously without funds, resources, man, woman hours, and that's what the foundation works on, is getting those resources to where they're needed, so that the work of what all of these wonderful people do can just continue on. And I think that we as a county, we as an area benefit from that, because without it, things would be tough. For me, I don't even want to imagine a world without Four Seasons.